So welcome everyone. I hope everyone had a good lunch. Welcome to our presentation of how to create a consistent brand voice.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our visionary partners. Thank you so much for helping us make ClioCon possible. I'm Sinead D'Souza. I am the Senior Art Director at Clio. I've been with Clio for 3.5 years, working with this amazing company. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to my creative team on the ground and back at home. Thank you so much for helping and making this conference possible come to life in a visual way. I have been in the creative industry for about 15 years, and I have been helping brands and businesses discover their identity and find their voice. And it's been a wild ride. I love doing this, and I'm so excited to be talking to all of you about this. And oddly, I'm a little nervous talking about it too.
And I am Obi Ikeme, the managing attorney of Ikeme Law. I've owned my law firm for about 6 years, going on 7 now. And to be honest, when I first started my firm, I wasn't thinking about a brand voice or anything. I just kind of started it, jumped into doing what I thought was marketing. But I will say that over time, I have learned how important it was to have a unique and consistent brand voice. I started to appreciate it more anytime I would speak to a client or someone would become a client, and they were comfortable at first. They were comfortable talking to me because whether they'd found me on TikTok, LinkedIn, IG, Facebook Live, they said, you are exactly the same as you are on the live. And I'm an immigration attorney, that's one of my practice areas, and for a lot of my clients who are dealing with sensitive issues, trying to figure out how to stay here, stay with their families, just that consistency and the trust they built, even though they've never spoken to me, was really helpful for them. So really excited for this presentation. And so in this session, you will learn how to improve recognition and loyalty through your brand voice, how to use your brand voice to increase customer trust, and how to establish your brand voice so it differentiates your firm from the competition.
Okay, so a lot of you might be wondering, what is a brand voice? And I'm here to shed some light on that. So just like individuals have their own unique way of speaking, brands can also have their own voice. A brand voice helps build a recognizable identity for your business, and it really does help set it apart from competitors. It's the way your brand and your business communicates to the world. A brand voice refers to the distinct and consistent tone of voice that your brand uses in its communication, its messaging, its interaction with its audience, in our case, our clients. And it's made up of many components, but 3 main components, which is personality, tone, and style. Your brand voice plays a crucial role in shaping how existing and potential clients interact and engage with your business. These interactions are what mold the client-business relationship. It's used across all your communication channels, as well as in-person communications with clients, such as client consultations, and if it's done well, it's consistent no matter what channel it's on, and if it's done very well, you'll find repetition patterns amongst it that help people remember and make it memorable. So, there are no rules to building your brand voice, but there are some guidelines, some really important guidelines. And based on those guidelines, especially the ones that Obi and I felt were the most impactful, we broke this presentation up into 4 sections. These are the 4 areas that we feel, again, make the most impact for your business, especially businesses who are in the process of establishing their brand voice and their brand identity. Remember, this is how your brand speaks to the world. So we're going to do a deep dive into each of these sections, each of these areas, and we're going to talk about the whys and the hows of each of them. Obi's going to touch on why these areas are so important for your business, and I'm going to talk about how you can put them into action. So we're going to do a quick summary of each of these areas first.
All right, so the first area is distinct. Your brand voice should be distinct. It should have a distinct tone of voice and your personality. Don't be anyone else. The second is connection. So your brand voice should be able to connect with your clients and to strengthen the client-firm relationship and build loyalty. Third, it should be consistent. So whether your clients are finding you on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, your website, your brand voice should be consistent across all the platforms. And finally, your brand voice should be maintained to ensure that you remain relevant in the marketplace.
Okay, so we'll get right into it. Section 1, We're going to talk about being distinct, being unique, and how to stand out in a sea of sameness. And I can't see your faces, but I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, okay, this is a lot easier said than done. And some of you might also be thinking, is anything unique anymore? Nihilists in the room. Here's what I mean when we say unique. So a well-defined brand voice helps distinguish the brand from competitors. It gives the brand a unique, distinct identity that makes it memorable in the minds of clients. And what we mean when we say well-defined is that the brand is clear on how it's speaking to its desired audience. It has a unique personality, tone of voice, and point of view that resonates with its desired audience.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about the why. And why does it matter for you to have a unique brand voice? A unique brand voice is going to reflect your firm's brand personality, values, and culture. It's going to allow you to communicate authentically with your audience and allow you to build trust and emotional connections. In a heavily saturated market, when you are unique, it brings in your ideal client. And a well-defined brand voice is going to help you connect with your target audience on a deeper level. And when your brand voice resonates with your audience's preference and values, they will be more likely to engage. Now, if anyone remembers Where's Waldo, I still have a hard time finding him, but if you are remembering Where's Waldo and referring back to the sea of sameness that Sinead talked about, when you don't have a distinct brand voice, it tends to cause confusion for your consumers. So in a crowded marketplace, when you have a distinct brand voice, it sets you apart from competitors, and it helps your brand become more easily recognizable and memorable among the consumers. Finally, a unique brand voice can make customers so loyal to that brand, and in some cases can create a divide. And you'll hear me talk about this brand a lot, but a perfect example of this is Apple versus Android. If I show of hands, how many people are Team Apple? Awesome. Team Android? Anybody? Cool, I'll take it. So I am Team Apple. I've been Team Apple for over a decade. There is no way you could, I'm not switching. I even made my husband switch to Apple, and he's an Android lover. But I've met many Android lovers who feel the same way about Apple. You could not pay them to go over to the Apple. The point I'm trying to make is that whether you are an Apple user or an Android user, you stay loyal. Another great example of this is Pepsi versus Coke. Now, in the glass, they look exactly the same. And before I say this, I know we've all been drinking a lot of Pepsi. I'm Team Coke, but I had one Pepsi, just one. I needed the caffeine. But from a brand perspective, and frankly from a flavor perspective, they are entirely different. I will say Pepsi tastes like sad tears and disappointment. Again, I had one Pepsi, so don't come for me, just one, okay? And then there was that Kendall Jenner ad that we're not really gonna talk about. So we'll move on. A unique brand voice is going to contribute to building long-term relationships with customers. When customers are able to identify with your brand's voice, they are more likely to become loyal advocates. Your brand voice is really why people choose to work with you. Your brand's unique attributes resonates with individuals, and it's what provokes your clients to choose you over your competitor.
Thanks, Abby. I'm also Team Coke and Team Apple, and I don't like that Kendall Jenner ad. So going back to that slide where I said it was easier said than done, or some of you are thinking it's easier said than done, you're right. It's really hard to achieve uniqueness. But there are some things you can do that are actionable and a bit tactical that I'm going to share with you right now. And the first thing I want to start with is this quote. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So Simon Sinek suggests that the why represents your organization's belief and purpose, and that organizations should use that why as the foundation for their operations and their communication. The why inspires people to action. So the first thing you need to do in order to uncover this uniqueness is uncover your why. Why did you decide to become a legal professional? When building your brand voice, you'll need to start with that why. That why is the narrative or story that communicates your values, purpose, and beliefs. When working with clients, I personally start with a discovery process that really is rooted in discovering the why. This process goes very deep because we're trying to uncover the values, purpose, and beliefs of a business. So in that mission. We want to know what your mission is. Why do you exist? Why are you doing the things you're doing? We want to know what you value. What are you hanging your hat on? What do you stand for? And we want to know what you believe in. What are you authentically and genuinely communicating to your client base? So again, it goes deep. We talk about the business background, client's background. I ask a lot of questions about purpose. And sometimes they're hard questions, like, why should I care about what you're doing? And I ask this from the perspective of, I'm helping you build a brand. I ask questions like, why do you choose to do this every day? What does your business want to be known for? These are all questions that you can start with asking yourself in order to find that uniqueness, find that why. We use a lot of feels-like words, feels-like associations. So what do you want your business to feel like? What is the feeling you want your clients to get? Most of the businesses I work with are here when we start this discovery process. And it takes a little while to get over feeling uncomfortable asking yourself these questions or working with brand partners to find these questions. And once they get over this feeling and start to lean into the process, magical things start to happen. We start establishing a story. Your story is the foundation for building your business's brand voice. If you're wondering why your personal story is at all relevant to your brand voice, we're talking about uniqueness here. And your story is yours, nobody else's. It's inherently what makes you distinct and unique compared to your competitors. Incorporating your storytelling into your brand voice makes you more relatable, more memorable. It builds an emotional connection between you and your client, building trust. So, first thing to do is find your why and use that why to build your story when you're developing a distinction or distinctness and uniqueness in your brand voice. The second thing to do is be Beyoncé. Just kidding. The second thing to do is you need to know what you're really, really good at. And when I say good, I'm talking Beyoncé level good. These are called winning traits. Winning traits are specific traits your business is most uniquely qualified to offer. When you confidently know what these traits are, you can confidently work them into your brand narrative and your brand voice. But you have to know exactly what they are. So Beyoncé's winning traits, it's not her voice, it's not her stage presence. Those are excellent. Her winning traits are the combination of her ability to empower and connect with her audience on a deep emotional level through her art and music. Nobody else can offer that to her fans the way she does. So we're going to do a little exercise on two more brands that do this really well. So when I say the word adrenaline, and I ask you to think about an energy drink, what comes to mind? I heard Red Bull. Gatorade, okay. Red Bull. They win at adrenaline. And when I say to think about legacy, and then I ask you to think about a watch, what comes to mind? That was a bit more unanimous. Rolex. So it's pretty clear that we know these brands make energy drinks, make watches, but what they win at is adrenaline and legacy. So really understanding those winning traits, as you can see, is a pretty powerful thing. Next, know how your brand is being perceived. Pay close attention to brand perception. Know how your brand is being perceived on various platforms. There are so many to keep track of now. Because a positive brand perception can drastically increase client advocacy and can drastically build up trust. Understanding how your brand is being perceived will also allow you to tailor your brand voice to match the context within each of the various platforms that you use. And an example of this is, if your business is on social media, your brand voice is naturally going to be a little more casual and a little more conversational compared to how you would write a letter of intent or how you would show up in an initial client meeting. So again, knowing that perception makes you more confident in using that in your brand narrative. Lastly, this is my favorite one. Personify your business's brand. You get to create an archetype for your business. So if your business was a notable person in history, a celebrity, an athlete, who would it be? Consider its personality traits, its lifestyle choices, cultural background, lived experience. Consider all the attributes that could make it human. As people, these are the attributes that make us unique. And the same thing goes for businesses. Finding commonalities amongst these unique attributes are what connects people to each other. And it's also what connects people to brands and your business. So, to recap, how do you stand out in a sea of sameness? Find your why. Find your story. Use that as the foundation when building your brand voice. Determine your winning traits. What are you Beyoncé level good at? Know how you're being perceived. How does your brand show up on various platforms? And define your personality. Who is your brand? Who is your business?
Thank you, Sinead. The next section that I think is really important, and probably one of the most important, is connect with your client. So a well-defined brand voice that connects with clients will help humanize your brand, and it'll make your brand relatable, memorable, and likable. And this connection is ultimately going to translate into a better customer relationship, increased loyalty, and business success. Now, you may ask, why is it important that your brand voice connects with your audience clients? And the fact is, people are smart, and they can see through smoke and mirrors. Now, when you're authentic and you have a consistent and authentic brand voice, it helps people to know what you're all about. And people really need to be able to identify with your brand. When you are authentic, it will invoke emotions and make it easier for your customers to connect with your brand on a personal level. Emotionally engaged customers are more likely to become loyal advocates. Authentic brands are more likely to be transparent about their operations, their sourcing, and their business practices. And this transparency will further strengthen the bond of trust with customers. When you do good work and you deliver a great client experience, people are going to remember it, no matter how big or how small. Strong relationships can lead to more clients through positive word of mouth. And one of my favorite examples of this is with Zappos. A woman bought a pair of boots for her husband as a surprise from Zappos. And unfortunately, he passed away shortly after. And so when she called customer service to return the item, not only did they give her a refund, but they sent flowers to her. Now, if you know about Zappos, you know that they are known for exceptional customer service and that their brand was built by keeping that promise. A lot of people think that branding is just logos, colors, and maybe your slogan. The fact is, your brand is the reputation that you are building or you will have built over the years. So it's important for you to remember that when you are doing good work and you are delivering a great client experience, people are going to remember that.
How do we connect? How can you ensure your brand voice connects with your clients? Make the client the hero of your business. And you can do that by prioritizing your client's experience. And we know Jack talks about this all the time. So I'm also referencing Donald Miller's Building a Story brand here. If you want your clients to engage, they need to be able to see themselves as the central character of your business. When clients feel like the hero of the story, they're more likely to connect with your brand on an emotional level. We aren't brand loyal because we see something wonderful in a brand. We are brand loyal because that brand sees something wonderful in us. Consider the emotions you want your brand's voice to evoke. This is another really crucial thing on how to help your brand voice connect to your client, because we connect through emotions. So is it excitement? Is it trust? Is it nostalgia? Empathy? Fuse those emotions into the tone of your content. Once you have a general sense of the type of emotion you want your brand voice to evoke, you can shift it slightly, again, depending on what platform you're on. But you have to get really comfortable with the emotion in the first place. So a good example of this, Obi, you did this morning, is When you're in the middle of a conversation talking about something serious or high pressure, like giving a presentation at a conference, and all of a sudden your phone rings and it's your kids.
Yeah.
My kid doesn't know how to talk, so I don't get phone calls. You pick up that phone, and even though you're in the middle of a very serious conversation and your tone is a little different, your tone is a little serious, you pick up that phone and you're like, "Hey, cutie, how are you doing?" I'm still the same, my brand voice is still the same, but my tone shifts a little bit depending on the context. So, again, we really want to evoke emotion in what we're saying. And I want to talk about one brand that does this really well, and that's Dove. So I know we all connect with brands differently, so I'm going to use Dove as an example because this one really resonates with me, especially when it comes to genuine authenticity and being able to evoke real feeling in the sense of truth from this brand. So Dove, in a way, speaks to me personally as a woman. Weirdly understands my insecurities, resonates with my struggles. Sometimes this brand is saying things that I'm only thinking. And I want to play a video for you. This ad is a little older, but this is really when Dove started to truly establish emotion into their brand voice and did it in a really authentic way. So I'm going to play this. It's 2 minutes long. Sit back, relax.
One thing about my body that I really love.
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I don't know.
Favorite part of my body? Whew. I can't think of any. I have no idea. That's hard. I can't think of anything actually. I like her glow.
Oh, how sweet.
And her smile. I really like her smile.
I love it. I like Devin's hair, personally. And her legs are also really awesome.
I love her face. Like, her face is beautiful. I love her complexion and
Her hair is so beautiful.
Her smile. Always liked her smile.
it's her breasts, actually.
Great.
Her face and her skin is just absolutely gorgeous.
I really like Rhiannon's back.
She has really, really nice eyes.
She has a very curvaceous body.
Everything.
Okay, so let's talk about emotion. The way Dove asked questions within this ad to the folks answering those questions evoked genuine emotion in them, and probably some genuine emotion to some of us in this audience. So again, this ad is about 10 years old, but it still feels relevant, and that's because it's the way Dove talks to their audience through thought-provoking, straightforward questions. They don't shy away from the truth. They tackle big controversial issues, which evoke a visceral feeling in you because it's emotive. So again, this is just one example of how powerful emotion can be. There are many, 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 but it is truly a tool you could use to start building a narrative that deeply connects to your clients. The next one is very tactical, and that's asking for feedback. This is another one that's a bit easier said than done because it puts us in a bit of a vulnerable state. It's really easy to find ourselves in a bit of an echo chamber of content these days. A lot of the messaging that we hear is really being cycled from business to business. When we're building a brand voice, it's so important to check in with your network and your trusted clients and ask for feedback, especially on whether or not the tone of your business, the tone of your narrative for your business is resonating and is attracting the clients you want to attract. Some of the questions I ask in discovery sessions and discovery processes I'm with businesses when I'm working through some branding work are questions like, do you feel like your brand and do you feel like our brand understands and addresses your needs? Is there anything about our tonality and messaging that we can improve on? Do you find our brand engaging? Do you find our brand content engaging? So specific questions like these really work in terms of understanding where your brand is at and understanding brand perception, what I spoke about earlier. On top of that, asking for feedback shows that you genuinely care about what you're saying and, more importantly, how you're saying it. That in itself builds a real strong connection between you and your clients. So, to recap, make the client the hero of your business's story. Make them the central character. Make sure you are able to evoke genuine emotion through your messaging. What does your messaging feel like? And ask for feedback. Knowing your brand perception and knowing how you're being perceived, I can say it again, is so, so important in order to develop a brand voice that really connects.
Thank you, Sinead. And now we're going to talk about consistency, whether it's offline or whether it's online. To foster trust between you and your clients, it's important for you and your team to ensure that you are consistent and you stay aligned with your brand voice, whether you're communicating online or offline. And you may be asking, why is consistency important when building a brand voice? Why does it even matter? And a consistent brand voice is going to reinforce your brand's values and mission. By consistently using language and tones that are aligned with your values, you are able to demonstrate your commitment to what your brand stands for. Consistency helps you stay at the forefront of your clients' minds. A consistent brand voice across all communication channels, whether that's on social media, whether that's your website, or whether that's advertising, is going to create a unified branded identity. This consistency is going to help enhance brand recognition, and it will reinforce your messaging. When your brand voice is consistent, there are no surprises and no one is caught off guard. A consistent brand voice ensures that your messages are clear and easy to understand. Customers don't have to decipher varying tones or messages. They're going to get it. And so it's going to make it easier that they'll grasp the essence of what you're communicating. When your brand voice is consistent, it creates an authentic, emotional connection between clients and brands. Consistency in how you communicate, including the tone, the style, and language you use, will help people easily recognize your brand. And over time, people are going to associate specific linguistic elements with your brand, making it more memorable. When your brand voice is consistent across all channels, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, your website, it's going to create a lasting impression on your clients and ensure that your brand is recognizable across all platforms. It's also going to make it easier to build trust and credibility with your clients. And we're back to Apple. So, a brand that I think that truly exemplifies consistency is Apple. No matter where you encounter the Apple brand, whether you're in the store, whether it's their ads, their website, the Genius appointment, they are consistent. You experience the same level of customer service whether it's on the phone or chatting on their website or at the store. And the cool thing about this is that this consistency can also be seen in their product packaging. Their commitment to innovative and minimalistic design can be seen across all channels. I love going to the Apple store. It speaks to my love for simplicity. And when your brand voice is consistent, it fosters trust and reliability.
Who keeps Apple packaging for way too long? Way too long. Okay. How do you build consistency into your brand voice? I've said this once before, and I'm going to say it again. There aren't any rules to doing any of this. There are just guidelines. And these guidelines, again, are really important when building brand voice. And in this specific section, I'm going to talk about 3 guidelines that are very important to keep in mind. How many times can I say guideline in this section? You can keep count. So the first thing is to develop clear brand voice guidelines. Create a set of these that outline your brand voice's values, personality traits, tone, and messaging. These guidelines serve as a reference point. They're guardrails for anyone using your brand voice to create content that engages with your clients. So the first thing is defining the tone and style of your brand voice, and provide examples of how your brand voice would respond in various situations. So using your brand voice and narrative, how would you interact with a new client? How would you interact with an existing client? How would you interact with an easy client? And then how would you interact with a not so easy client? Because we all have those from time to time. Ensure that the brand voice remains consistent, but again, that tone shifts a little bit. So I'm going to take us through a little exercise. You can take a photo of this slide because it is very handy. This is something I use in a discovery process, especially when we are establishing guardrails for our brand voice. This matrix, no matter who you're working with, it's something you can hand off to anyone creating content for you and say, stick within here. These are really important. So when I go through this, I'm going to do it really fast. This doesn't take 30 seconds on stage. This takes weeks, months. But for the sake of quickness, we'll do it in seconds. So company X values fun. Sorry, company Y. Company X is taken now. Company Y values fun. Our brand voice for company Y is friendly because we value fun. So our communication style is affectionate, it's playful, and it's kind. So you can see how these words connect back to the box before it. And when you are starting to build your brand voice, you can understand how a sentence would look that sounds affectionate, playful, and kind because your brand voice is friendly and you value fun. And now, your brand voice is not assertive or arrogant. You can also understand how to not include these two things into your messaging because that wouldn't align to your brand voice. So usually for a matrix like this, there are not two, maybe 4 to 5 sections, and we'll go through another one just to make sure we understand the brief. And I know I'm in a room full of people who really like words, so I've also included a word count at the bottom here. It's really important you stick to this word count because being able to distill what you value into one word will make it much easier for folks who are engaging with your clients on your behalf, content creators, to understand what this is all about. So company Y also values transparency, and so their brand voice is honest. Therefore, their communication style is direct, informative, and straightforward. And their communication style is most certainly not blunt, impolite, or snappy. So again, I've done this in seconds, but this work does take a bit of time because you have to establish your why, and you have to establish your story, and you have to really understand your purpose, your values, and beliefs before you can even get here. What this document does is that it enables your team. Nothing erodes consistency and consistency within your brand voice quicker than a team that doesn't communicate. Everyone representing your brand, from content creators to customer service reps, should understand the brand guidelines. Make the training materials accessible and readily available. Don't hide them in a folder somewhere in your desktop that nobody can find. And use them for onboarding new team members. Go a step further, designate a team or an individual responsible for overseeing and approving content before it goes live to make sure they're staying within these guardrails. And lastly, build and use templates. Templates go a long way when we're wanting to create consistency within our brand voice. Recurring content such as social media posts, emails, newsletters, elements within these 3 things can benefit from being templated with pre-approved messaging and images that take the guesswork out of creative decision-making for content creators. And lastly, again, centralize these documents so people can find it. This is one of the easiest ways to maximize consistency across your team. It's just things are templated so you don't have to guess. You don't have to make up newness all the time. There are a couple of resources that I would recommend when you're trying to build templates. Canva, Adobe Express, Visme, Easel, and VistaCreate are some of them. Obi, I know you use Canva. And
I am Team Canva all the way. I've used a couple of the others, but Canva is my favorite. So if you stumble across, whether it's I think my Instagram profile, it's consistent. I like a clean, minimal aesthetic, and I found that just having a set of templates that my team can use or that I can use to post content just keeps it consistent. So Canva is a really, really good tool.
we don't have any affiliate links, so
Yeah,
just
but it's a great
use
tool.
use them as you will. So to recap, develop guidelines. This is so important. Use those guidelines to enable your team. Make sure these guidelines are being used. Once your team is enabled, they can start building templates and then using those templates to enable vendors, content creators, anyone who you're working with to create consistency within your brand voice.
And finally, if you don't maintain it, it will break down. Maintaining your brand voice is essential for staying relevant, resonating with changing audience expectations, and maintaining a competitive edge in an ever-evolving market. Now, you may be asking, I have a brand voice. Why is it important to keep it up to date? Constant changes in the marketplace will mean that your brand will have to evolve over time. Brands often evolve over time, whether it's through new product offerings, expanded services, or a shift in values. Now, an updated brand voice ensures that your communication aligns with these changes and continues to present a cohesive brand image. Brands that don't evolve risk becoming irrelevant, and an outdated brand voice can make your brand seem stagnant and disconnected from the present. Now, it's important to have regular updates to your brand voice to keep it up to date, to show that you are actively engaged with the world around you. Trends in language, in culture, and in technology are constantly changing. These constant changes mean that your brands will be presented with either the option to pivot or perish. An outdated brand voice might feel out of touch and fail to engage with modern audiences. However, when you choose to stay current, you can incorporate relevant brands and cultural references, making your brand more relatable and appealing. An outdated brand voice might feel out of touch and fail to engage with modern audiences. Now, as things started to change, as technology advanced, things became more digital. Brands like Radio Shack and Blockbuster, they didn't see the need to adopt, they kept their same business models, and they struggled to remain relevant, grow, eventually shut down. However, brands like Netflix, Best Buy, and Amazon, they embraced that technology and it amplified their brands. Now, when we talk about remaining relevant, when we talk about the ability to adapt, a perfect example of a brand that does this is Amazon. Okay. So, who here remembers when Amazon was just an online bookstore? Cool. I'm someone that bought my college textbooks, my law school textbooks from Amazon. However, as things have become more advanced, as the world has changed, Amazon has evolved from being just a digital bookstore to having its own entire marketplace.
I tried to order, I don't know, like a pair of pants, and I was like, maybe I can just get it delivered to the hotel. I didn't do that.
I do it all the time. And Amazon's brand voice has changed from just selling books to the fact that their customers can get literally anything from their website. I have a kid who can't really have dairy, and so during the formula shortage, I was only able to find her milk on Amazon. So no matter what was happening, I knew that even if I couldn't get her milk, I could get that from Amazon, so that was helpful.
Okay. How do we maintain this brand voice of ours? Your ability to adapt plays a huge role in keeping your brand voice up to date. So adapting is hard. Change is hard, I know, but being able to do it is so crucial, especially in rapidly changing markets. An irrelevant brand voice might struggle to pivot or adjust its strategy to meet new challenges, which puts the business at a disadvantage. In order for your brand to continue to thrive, you have to care about maintaining its connection with clients and continuous development of your brand voice. So I'm going to talk about a brand right now that did this really well. How many people owned a pair of these? Not that many. That's okay. Maybe I just can't see. So Doc Martens. The thing I find really interesting about this brand is that Doc Martens went from being a functional work boot, something comfortable, durable, reliable, initially worn by post people, factory workers, people who were on their feet all day long, to a subculture icon that became a symbol for rebellion and self-expression. In British youth culture, punk, grunge, glam, music festival culture, and now they are a pivotal part of the fashion canon. The shoe itself didn't change, which is rather remarkable. What changed is the way they communicated to the world. They went from being straight edge and systematic and functional to being diverse, bold, and rebellious. All because they paid attention to how they were being perceived and adapted their brand and their brand voice to speak to the folks who were embracing their product in a way they never thought was possible and they never imagined. So, next, be adaptable and stay up to date with what's going on in the world. In order to adapt, you need to stay current. And I'm 99% sure that everyone in this room knows how to do that. But we can all feel a little overwhelmed with the amount of information we have to keep tabs on. So, when Doc Martens was doing this, they were doing it through word of mouth. They were listening, they were observing, and that really worked for them. It worked in their favor. We can do very simple things with our business, like setting up Google Alerts if you haven't already, subscribe to industry publications, engage with online communities like the law community we have at Clio. Shameless plug. These are just some of the excellent ways you can stay on top of current events, and you don't have to stay on top of everything, but just what's relevant to you and your business. Lastly, be open to new ideas. This goes hand in hand with adaptability. You can't do one without the other. It's very straightforward, but it's pretty tough to do. When Doc Martens was essentially rebranding based on what they were hearing and seeing about their brand, I bet it was tough. I bet it was tough for podiatrists to say, okay, I guess we won't talk about this shoe because the rock stars want to talk about it instead. Doc Martens didn't care, they just did it. When things are working well, it can be tough to disrupt the status quo, and I get that. But it's so necessary for us to do that, to keep our brand voice feeling current and aligned to what's going on in the world. And if you're wondering, how will I know if it's a good idea? How will I know if it's for my business? If you're clear on your whys, if you're clear on your brand story, if you're clear on your brand voice and how you're being perceived, you will know exactly what ideas you want to invite into your business that are feeling new, and you'll know exactly what ideas that don't align to your values that you can just pass on. So you can see how all of these sections are intertwined. You cannot achieve one without the other. And lastly, make relevant content. We are so focused on having things go viral, perform, all of this, and that can lead to a lot of analysis paralysis, especially for those of us who aren't working with, huge teams of marketing professionals that are listening to the data and watching it as part of their jobs. For those of us who are just doing it on our own, make relevant content, focus on that. Content plays a significant role in shaping and expressing your brand's voice. It's through content that your brand's personality, values, and messaging is communicated to your audience. It allows you to educate your audience on what you're doing, what your industry is about, what your products and services are. Your brand voice can influence how you present information, whether you choose to be casual, informative, authoritative, whatever that may be. That's the emotion we're talking about. Content is a means of engaging with your audience, and it's the way you respond to comments, questions, feedback on things like social media, for instance. It really reflects these interactions. Content is such a channel to build trust. So if you don't maintain it, it'll break down. And here's some of the things you can do. To recap, be adaptable. Make sure you're being flexible with yourself and your business, especially in changing times, especially when you're noticing things are shifting. Stay up to date. Keep tabs on your industry and what's going on and the peripheral vision of your industry. And be open to new ideas. If you are established in all of the other sections that we talked about, this openness will become very evident into what you want to welcome into your business and what you maybe feel doesn't align. And make relevant content. This one is by far, I feel, the most impactful when we're talking about maintenance. Make sure that content is always staying relevant to who you're talking to. Okay, we are on time. What did we learn? I know we learned a lot, and so we're going to recap these sections, and then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A.
So, first we learned to create uniqueness, that your brand voice needs to have a distinct tone of voice and personality. And I'll give a personal example for this. So, I'm an immigration attorney. I'm also an immigrant. And when I'm talking to my clients, or when I'm creating content for social media, I understand the value of a green card. It's not just about getting that piece of paper that allows you to stay here in America. What it also means for my clients is peace of mind. What it also means for my clients is that it's going to affect their generations, not just their kids, but it's also going to affect future generations. My kids are first-gen immigrants. And so when I'm talking, I am invoking that it's not just about the document, that's great, but what else? How does it impact your family? What is it going to mean for your future generations? I tell my clients, I want you to live your version of the American dream, whether that's education, whether that's entrepreneurship, whatever you want. And so when I'm making content, my clients know, and when they come to me, they said, you spoke to me. You said, I don't have to have what everyone else is having, but I want my version of the American dream. So I have, over time, had that distinct voice. You will hear me talk about peace of mind. You will hear me talk about the future generation.
Connection. Connection builds trust. It builds loyalty. So your brand voice should connect with your clients, and that will inherently strengthen the client-firm relationship.
Next is consistency. Now, whether your clients are finding you on TikTok, whether Instagram, whether on your website, even meeting you in person, it's important that there's no switches. Who you are online is who you are offline. It makes it easier for your clients to trust you. It will definitely make it easier for them to want to work with you.
And lastly, maintenance. Maintenance can look like a quick little trim, but it also can look like a complete brand overhaul if that's what your business needs at the moment. So your brand voice should be maintained to just ensure relevant in the market, and that means whatever it means in the moment.
And as you think about your brand voice, here are some of our favorite books that touch on developing your brand voice and your brand.
I'll leave this up for a quick minute. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I'm Sinead D'Souza once again.
And I'm Obi Kimmer.
And I think we have a little bit of time to take some questions. Can't quite see.
Could you put back up the slide with the books?
Yeah, good question.
And after this is over, can I get the slide that's trimming the puppy?
Yes, definitely. I don't have the rights to that, so don't tell anyone that I gave that to you. I think there's a question.
How do you create a consistent brand voice in a firm that has multiple attorneys that focus on different practice areas?
That's a great question. So, do you mind? If
I got you.
Well, okay.
Okay.
You go
so,
first, then I'm going to go next.
On one side, I practice immigration, and the other side, I practice business and intellectual property. So I kind of have to split them off so as not to confuse my clients. When I'm talking about immigration, it is, like I said, I'm talking about what the green card is going to do for them. For a lot of people, they don't want to come forward to talk about the immigration problems because they're afraid. So I'm talking about trust. I'm talking about the importance of what that green card is going to do for them. Now, when it comes to my business clients, and every once in a while they intersect, so I'm working with immigrant founders, or even if they're not immigrants, I'm talking about how to protect your brand. I'm talking about why IP is important. We made a comment about not having the right. So I'm talking about the fact that you are building a brand, you are spending time, you're spending money to build this brand, you're getting that brand recognition. And at some point, you want to start thinking about protection and what do you have to lose if you're not protecting it. Like I said, my practice areas don't always intersect, but I have over time learned how to just talk to different people. It's not always easy, but overall, I think if someone asked my overarching theme, it would just be to show up in your work as yourself, because immigrants are coming here to build their own dream, and then as entrepreneurs, they are also putting their creativity out there, and it's important for them to be able to show up as themselves, but also protect what they're showing up as. I hope that helps.
I'm going to add just a little bit to that as well. I think in the firm, find the overlaps, right? Yes, there may be multiple practice areas, but the firm as a business, there is probably an inherent value, purpose, and belief that sort of ripples through all of those practice areas. And I think that's where the brand voice starts from. It really shouldn't be catered to each practice area if that's not working. In Obi's case, it works really well. Mm-hmm. And I do think in your case too, you're probably looking for some overlaps in how to maintain that consistency throughout your voice.
I think about how I want my clients to feel. I think about, because it's hard work, no matter what they're doing. So I think about how I want them to feel. I'm transparent, I'm direct, so if I can help you, I'm gonna be able to help you, but if I can't help you, I'll let you know. So my overarching theme would be that of hope and just building. You're welcome.
I kind of want to write off what she just asked right there in regards to making your brand, making your voice. How would you approach team members, whether it's attorneys or staff, that don't want that voice? They don't. They're okay with what they're doing, their normal day-to-day, but they're not willing to, like, how would I say this? Put the voice out there, put the brand out there.
Great question.
It's a great question. This is the way I look at it, and I know everyone's going to be different. When I'm hiring people, I want them to have buy-in. The first thing I'm going to talk about is who I am as a brand and what I stand for, and I say this all the time. So with my team, I let them know that my clients are important to me. Whether you're on the business side, whether on the immigration side, my clients are important to me. And so I see this with my team members. I have my client liaison who, when I'm talking to my clients, they are so pleased with her because she is polite. She makes them feel comfortable. She is sweet, okay? And so at the end of the day, my clients are just like, oh my goodness, thank you so much, she was amazing. I will check in with her from time to time. I don't always have the easiest clients, whether it's immigration or whether it's business, because I'm dealing with things that are important to people. But I always let her know that it's important for you to, if there's something that you're struggling with, come to me. But your team members need to have buy-in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Otherwise, that inconsistency. If you and the attorneys on social media talking about something, your brand values, but your team member exhibits something else, there's that going to be disconnect, and it creates confusion. So whether it's through team meetings, whether it's through having a central repository of what our brand values are, what our mission is, I think it's important that your team members, and it may take time for some of them, if a brand voice is nothing you've talked about or thought about before, it may take time for them to develop it, but I think that as a founder, as a firm owner, it's important for you to help them get there. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Like the brand, but how do you address a client that feels entitled all the time? Not just one client, but multiple clients, because obviously our clients are important to us, but there's also those entitled people that, hey, there's a lot more clients, not just you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do think that really lies in establishing good, healthy boundaries between the client and firm relationship right from the get-go. However, there will always be a sense of entitlement sometimes with those tricky clients. What you can do, and I find this sometimes with businesses I'm working with, where sometimes I'm getting my phone's dinging, it's the weekend, and I'm like, this is my time to hang with my family right now. what I ask is, can I make this person's day today? Is this thing that this person is asking for something I can handle now? Is it a quick question? Can I make their day? And if I can't, it's about communication, right? And so when I say make the client the central character of your story, I'm really talking through messaging and how you're speaking to them from a content perspective. I'm not really talking about let them be intrusive in your day all the time, right? I think there's a difference between those two things. So make them the central character of your brand's story in how you're communicating to them on your platforms. And set good boundaries, good healthy boundaries with them on when you're going to communicate to them when you're working with them on a one-on-one level. And ask, can I make this person's day today? And if it's within your power that day and that moment to make your client's day, why not?
And I can speak to that too. Just like Sinead said, it's also, I think when we talk about messaging, how it used to be is that the firms, the businesses talked about their accomplishment, but they never really talked about how they could help the client. So we saw a lot of words about award this, award that, but we never talked about how we can help the client. So like Sinead said, it's making them the hero. If you've read Building a Story brand, Donald Miller says, I'm Obi. Everybody always thinks I'm named after Star Wars. I'm not. It's a cultural name. But he says, make them feel like you are their guide. And so I help my clients with that. But to your question, when I first started my firm, no boundaries. I worked weekends. I answered calls on weekends. It was crazy. Then the burnout got real. And so for me, it became important to set boundaries. So now when I have a new client come in, they get an email from me or the client liaison. Thank you for choosing your firm. We're really excited to work with you. Here's a few things to help you get started. Here's the direct number. Here are our hours. That's in bold. Monday through Friday. If you are emailing us on a weekend, we'll get back to you on the next business day. And I do have someone who checks emergencies. And so from time to time, if it's an emergency, because sometimes my immigration clients, it is an emergency, I may respond on the weekends. Another thing is setting that tone from them. My team is really important to me. I don't play with my team. And so it is there, my retainer, because I've had this experience where people have been rude to my team members or anything like that. They work hard. And so I set that boundary from the get-go. It's in the retainer. If you're rude to me or my team, I can handle myself. But my team, that's not a joke. And I let my team members know, if the client is rude to you or they talk to you a certain way, come let me know. So I think from early on, it's really important for you to let them know, this is me, this is how I work, and they can make that choice. We're going to work with you, we're going to retain you, or we're not. And that's a personal choice. But you've got to stay true to your boundaries.
I think we have time for one more, if there is one more out there.
Have you found trying to develop a brand when you have a multi-generational firm that the generations tend to have different values even regarding things like authenticity, and trying to develop some type of consistent branding that is, well, consistent when you have vastly different perspectives on even words like that?
Yes. There's always going to be discrepancies, and there's always going to be different perspectives that come to play when you're creating a brand. And I really do think going back to that schematic is really important. First, setting the values, because I do think once you've established the values of what your brand stands for, all of those other things can trickle out of that. And get them involved. I think what's so tricky about branding is that sometimes businesses can hold onto branding really tightly, and that works in some situations, but as soon as you're finding that, maybe there's a bit of resistance to what we are working on, share it outwardly with the team. And share it in a way that makes people feel like they can contribute, because especially for teams, once they feel buy-in, as Obi said, into your brand, they're going to feel ownership. And that's the key you want to enable with all of your team members. You want them to be able to feel ownership of that brand so that they can communicate about it authentically outward.
There's also got to be buy-in at the leadership level. So you're talking about multi-generational, and I think, there may be differing opinions. There may not be agreement on everything, but there should at least be some middle ground that speaks to what you're trying to do. So if both, if that multi-generational can come and find some sort of middle ground on values and mission statement and things like that, then pass it on to the team, I think that'll help.
Thank you so much
All right.
for joining us in this session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.